done with casting pearls amongst the swine. 'Cause each of us is running out of time. It's already started silent, you won't hear a chime. You'll be measured and punished for each heavenly crime.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Belfast Bapcast. I'm here today with Allegedly Dave. Allegedly Dave is a very unique character, and he deals in the stories that were told and who benefits from them, and why questioning them is now imperative. Deals in independent thought, long form conversation, and no messing about. So, Dave, it is extremely a pleasure to have you on the Belfast Bapcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure. I've been looking to speak to you for quite some time. So, just to get a wee bit of background, I believe you were not always as existential, and you were in the banking world, etc. previously in America. Is that right, or you were?
Actually, I was in the computer programming world. I just happened
Okay.
to be, working in the finance sector, but yeah, I was working as a programmer in New York, and I happened to be there for 9/11. So I actually watched it happen in front of me.
Wow.
So that was basically my start of waking up. It was that, and the fact that I had my midlife crisis at the same time. That's that moment where you go, what the hell am I doing? What's the point of all this? Is this it?
I've had several of those.
Oh, wow. I had one big one. So I started finding out that 9/11 wasn't what we thought it was, and then I started finding out that my life wasn't what I thought it was.
Okay.
And just my world collapsed on me.
So, if I'm right in what I recall, you were doing very well, financially, etc. in that sector, and were driving a Ferrari at one point. Is that right?
Yeah, I was making loads of money. I had the Ferrari. My wife had the car that she always wanted. We had the big house, and I had a man cave full of man toys. If something was new and shiny, I had number 5.
Yeah.
So, but I started to, again, that moment where I was thinking, well, why am I doing this? What's it all for? And I tell this story a lot, but so I'm going to say it again.
Go ahead.
I was out in a Ferrari, right? And I pulled up at some traffic lights, and there was a whole bunch of people walking across the road, and they stopped on the other side of the road, and to look at the car. And I'm sitting in the car, I'm looking straight ahead. I look at them, and look straight ahead. I look at them again, and I think, hang on, I'm in a car. From where I'm sitting, I can't tell I'm in a Ferrari. Yes, there's a badge and everything, but it's a car, right?
Yeah.
Did I buy this car for me or for them? So, I went home, and I had this long night, a sort of long dark night of the soul, trying to figure this out. And the conclusion was I bought it for them, and I started pulling out other threads of my life, and every one of them, just like that, every one of them just collapsed, and I had this empty life, really, when I pulled everything apart. My job as a programmer, my job was essentially put people out of work and take the humanity out of decision making. That's not what I signed up for. That's not what I signed up for. I was here to help people, right? But I was actually hurting people. And that came about when I was really proud of myself about doing this bit of coding. So there was this really difficult problem that this woman in the New York Stock Exchange had to figure out every month. And it took her a month to figure it all out. And it was literally, she had 3 spreadsheets open, and she had to kind of work out, how to combine them in a certain way. So I literally got on a case, and a week later, I was so proud of myself. I literally got it done in 30 seconds, or not even 30 seconds, 5 seconds. Press a button, all got done. And
Unbelievable.
so I was really proud of myself when I went to show it. And so I hit the button, and there you go. See, it all works. And the woman came up to me afterwards and said, "Well, it's lucky I'm retiring, isn't it?" So that's when it hit me. I thought, "Oh no!" So when she retires, there won't be another person taking that job because I've got rid of that job now.
Yeah.
And the actual task had a component where it was they would satisfy the long-standing clients and the good people and whatever. They'd put them first, right? They'd sort of weight it towards that. But my software didn't do that. It just came up the most efficient way. So it took the humanity out of that process.
Yeah, and that couldn't be more relevant than it is today, where everything is becoming automated and artificial intelligence is sort of constructing the reality around us. It's a very different
Yeah,
time we live in.
yeah. I mean,
So
where the computer says no, yeah. Sorry, the computer says no. Yeah. Well, if it was a human you were talking with, so they say no. You say, well, why? And they go, oh, well, it's because this, that, and the other. Well, hang on a minute, but that's not right. But with a computer, you can't argue. Computer says no. Sorry.
yeah, it's very soulless, isn't it?
Yeah.
And whenever you
And that
remove
was my
the
job.
humanity. So what
That
year
was
was
my.
this that you decided enough's enough?
Oh, this was 2004, kind of going into 2005.
Okay, and can you describe 2001 for us whenever you were watching September 11th, like what it was like being on the ground?
Well, actually, I had a very lucky escape because a month before I turned down a job on the 40th floor of Tower One with Lehman Brothers. Literally, I turned the job down, and I took a job right across the water, directly across the water in Hoboken, right on the waterfront. So on the day, I got into work nice and early, and one of the secretaries ran in and said, she said, a plane's hit the World Trade Center. So we all ran out onto a pier, out onto the Hudson, and we literally just looking across to the island, and seeing all the smoke billowing out. Now, this is a controversial thing because there's been theories that come out since. But while we were standing there, we saw the second plane flying in low over the Statue of Liberty from our perspective. And it was coming low. We're thinking, what's he doing? And we saw the plane kind of, from my perspective, it disappeared behind the building, and we saw the explosion. Didn't see the plane come out the other side. So,
Yeah.
as you know, from my perspective, I saw a plane. So these people who keep saying there's no planes, I saw a plane.
Well, you can't really deny your own eyes, whether it was a hologram, whether it was a plane, whether it was a whatever. If you've seen a plane, you've seen a plane. So
Yeah,
your eyes don't lie to you. But unfortunately
could have been a
nowadays,
hologram, but yeah, that's the difficulty these days. But yes, it could have been a hologram. I accept that. They probably, they do have technology way in advance that we know about, and holography. Yes, I believe they've got that. So yes, the time could have been a hologram, but for me, it looked solid. The sound seemed to be right. So, what can I
it was
say?
an airplane. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've never been a no planer truth kind of guy. I've just been looking at the obvious things, like how on earth did WTC 7 fall when it wasn't hit by a plane and into its own footprint, and also why has there never been another structure that has fell like that after impact? Like look at Grenfell Towers, for example. It was on fire for a
Mhm.
day and still stayed standing. You know, that was the first thing come into my head. Why isn't this collapsing into its own footprint? You know, it doesn't seem, but it is what it is. So
Well, there
in
was
2004, did you come back then to England straight away, or did you live for a while in the States?
no. I carried on living. I carried on living in the States for a while. But my marriage took a toll because my wife couldn't go on this journey with me because not only was I finding out about 9/11, so 9/11 led on to figuring out who was behind it, which is a project for the new American century, which led me to the New World Order, which then led me to look at the monetary system and then the legal system and so on and so on and so on. And every time I found a new rabbit hole, it was like intense study and this amazing revelation, and it's like flurry of trying to tell everybody about it, and everybody
Well,
sort of pushing a little further away from me.
from female perspective, obviously a wife wants security and wants stability, and that's going to be very unnerving for her going from a successful job with all the trimmings to you looking into every single conspiracy that's ever came up, and yeah, it's understandable, but uh,
Well,
you can't
it didn't. Sorry, I'm
go ahead.
I'm jumping. I was going to say it wasn't completely like that because I started to recognise that I was too sort of trying to give everybody the whole picnic. So I decided to write a book. So I channeled all my energy into kind of sorting it all out in my head on paper, essentially. So it didn't go out. It didn't explode out, and so much after that.
So you were one of the first guys that introduced my wee brain to the flat Earth, and never in my life did I think I would entertain that. But the common sense and the way in which you laid it out just made it very simple, because it is common sense when you think, everything about your natural senses tells you that the Earth in which we live is not a globe, but yet
Mhm.
we have been hoodwinked into the heliocentric model. And I mean, obviously, that's not your only field of expertise. You've went down many rabbit holes, and we're about to go down another one today about the lovely island of Ireland that I am currently on, which I'll probably get shot for calling it that, because there's even an argument over there if the north is part of the island of Ireland. It's a very strange wee country. But you had said the story of the Red Hand of Ulster, so tell us a wee bit about that.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there is, some local explanation for why there's a red hand there. But if you look at the Ulster flag, it's not just the red hand, right? There's the red hand resides in a what they call the Star of David, which isn't the Star of David, by the way. It's a Star of
Ramfan?
Moloch or Remphan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Remphan. Um, but obviously, it's supposed to indicate David. And it's got a crown above it to indicate royalty. So what that red hand symbolizes is a story from the Old Testament. Okay, so the story goes that Judah, who was of the royalty tribe, so the royal tribe, he had two sons, and they were twins. And just before they were born, one of the babies stuck their hand out, and the midwife thought, okay, this is going to be the firstborn. So they tied a scarlet thread around that hand. Okay, and the baby pulled the hand back in, and the other baby was born first. So that baby was Phares, and the second baby was called Zara. Okay, so Phares became the royal line. So the dynasty, the succession came from Phares.
Okay.
Zara was still royal, but he wasn't in the line of succession. So he actually left. He left the Holy Land, and he went across Europe, and with his people, and he became or his people became the kings of Europe. Okay, so he's because again, still royalty. So the red hand signifies Zara, and the crown,
Okay.
obviously the crown says there's royalty here. So so that fits in with what I found out about the history of Ireland. So you do have the regular history of Ireland, but they don't talk about what I found out, which is okay. I'm going to have to go back a bit. So I don't know if you've heard of a people in Africa called the Igbo or
No.
Imbu.
No.
Okay.
Oh no, I've heard of Ibu. Yeah.
Ibu, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of other tribes called Ewe, which is the same word, Ewe, Ivry, right? So Ivory Coast. It's not Ivory, it's Ivry Coast, right? It's a different word. And it's the same word as Ibu, right? I know it doesn't sound it, but I might get into that later. But these all these different tribes, there's another one called Yabir, okay? All these different tribes all have the same name, even though there's different dialects, right? That word means Hebrew, okay? Now, there was a branch of the same Hebrews who went across Europe, right? They were called the Iba. So Ibu, Iba, Ivry, Ewe, it's the same word,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And it means Hebrew. So the Iba or Haiba or Heba, yeah, they went across Europe and they settled in a place they named after themselves, which was the custom back in those days. They'd name a place after the people. They called it the Iberian Peninsula, right, which is Spain and Portugal,
Yeah.
right? Some of those people left the Iberian Peninsula and they founded another land. Right now, there were people there already, but they founded this land. They ended up calling it Hibernia, right?
Scotland.
Which is sorry,
Scotland. No,
no,
Scotland.
Hibernia was Ireland,
Okay. Okay.
and Hibernia in Paleo Hebrew means land of the Hebrews. Okay,
Okay.
so some people from Hibernia left, and they founded another land, and the only name that survives is Hebrides. All right, so you can follow again with just listening to the place names. You can follow the progression: Iberia, Hibernia, Hebrides. Yeah. Now I was looking for some information about these Iberians. There's not much really because again, this information has been whitewashed, completely gone out of history. The closest you'll get to finding them is they call them Celt Iberians. Okay, trying to conflate them with another people. But these Iberians, right? Okay, sorry, I'm going to have to go step back again for
Do you have a time
the
frame? Sorry, like what sort of era? This what sort of?
This is difficult because another event happened in 1103 BC, which is the founding of Britain or England, right?
Yeah.
That happened in 1103 BC, and the account was that they were met by Iberians, brethren that were already there. So this is prior to 1103 BC. Okay.
So the only thing common from this island that I have ever heard, even slightly in relation to what you're saying there, is there's an old myth or whatever you want to call it that Jacob touched down in Ireland with a Egyptian princess who had lineage to King David.
Scotia.
Yeah, and that
Oh,
there is tribe of Dan as well,
Mm-hmm.
linked
Is it the
to the.
Tefi?
Yeah, it's Tatafi is the princess's name, and the so I know that the British Isles and Ireland have always had what I've referred to it as British Israelism. There's been strong Israelite roots throughout the history, so that's not very well known, but it's something that I have looked into over the years, but certainly not the information that you're coming off with. So please keep going.
Right. Well, as I mentioned, right, this tribe of people essentially were the same tribe as the Igbo. So they were black. So you'll
Okay.
find if you go back into history that the Spaniards and Portuguese, the original Spaniards and Portuguese, were black people. Okay. Again, if you look at some books from the 1700s and 1800s, you'll find that a black man, a Jew, and a Spaniard were synonymous, right?
All the
So
same. Yeah.
yeah, so the Irish, the original Irish, were black people. Okay, and again, this is information that's been really hidden. So where if you start with the name Iba, okay, now these islands have been influenced by Canaanites and Germanics. Okay, now the Canaanites couldn't pronounce the letter V. Okay, so it's like Russians. They can't, when they say vodka, they'll say wodka or vodka. Yeah, so
Yeah.
B or W kind of substitute for V, right? The Germanics can't say V or W, sorry. So they say "We will kill you," yeah, because
Yeah.
they can't say the W, right? So the Iber, right, or the Iberish became the Ivorish, became the Irish. Yeah. So
Madness.
it's again. I'm only looking at this part of the history of Ireland because I was following it from the Holy Land, basically. So how it interacts with the other parts of your history, I'm not concerned with that. But up until the 1700s, Ireland was black. Okay. Now, what happened in Britain or England was after the last black king, who was Charles II. Right, Charles II was the last black king of the United Kingdom. After he was deposed, a Germanic king, a white Germanic king, William of Orange, took the throne. And he got his attack dog, Oliver Cromwell, to attack Ireland. Now, Cromwell's job was to exterminate the Irish. That was his mission. Okay, so he killed as many Irishmen as he could, and those many he didn't kill, he transported to England's new colonies in the Caribbean. Okay, and as a result, the Ireland's population went down by 40%. That's all the men gone. Literally, he got rid of all the men. Okay, so there was just a population of black women left in Ireland. Right, Oliver Cromwell couldn't pay his soldiers, so he gave his soldiers lands in Ireland, and those lands came with titles. So this Englishman or German, because the English are really the Anglish, the Anglo-Saxons, the Germans, yeah. Right? So these Englishmen took these titles of nobility and they raped the women who were there. The darker skinned offspring got transported, right? And the lighter skinned ones got to stay. Right? So you do that for 300 years, what do you end up with? So you literally end up with a new, well, you can't, not white. They're not white. They look white. Okay. But there's something called the one drop rule. I don't know if you've heard it.
No, so that's what you were saying to me the other day in the text message. So please explain. Yeah.
Okay. So the one drop rule is one drop of Negro blood makes you a Negro. So even though that Negro blood had been whitewashed out for 300 years, one drop of Negro blood makes you a Negro, which is why the enmity between the English, the Germans, the red-haired, green-eyed Germanics, right,
Yeah.
looking over at the Irish, saying, "Well, these are mongrels. They've got they're still Negro at heart." Okay, so
Well,
that's why.
that's always been like, even without knowledge of this sort of history, like the Irish have always been what you would describe as the white Negro anyway. You know, they have, like, was Richard D. Hall, the comedian, says he went to a bar with an Irishman, and he was like he thought he was the nigger, because he was like, "Is it okay if I go in here? Is it okay if I go in here?" And Richard D. Hall goes, "You're white, man. It's okay. It's okay." But the white, they were sent over as slaves. Then the darker skinned ones were the ones that were sent as slaves, I imagine.
Well, here's the thing: from the perspective of the Caribbean, white people or whiter people started coming over, right? That from because they were lighter skinned than the ones already there, right? Because essentially they were Germans, they were kind of darker skinned Germans, right? But
Okay.
they were given the overseer's job. Yeah, so when they become light enough, they were given the overseer's jobs, and so they maintain this kind of hierarchy over in the Caribbean. Yeah, so yeah, from their perspective, it was white people were coming over, and those at the beginning, when they were being also transported to America from Ireland. Okay, you've got this idea of indentured servitude and stuff, but the first people going over to Ireland were black. To America were black, and they got lighter as they were transported. Yeah, so the Irish didn't achieve white status until 1940. Yeah, so there's a book called How the Irish Became White by Noel Igniew or something like that. Yeah, I found it in there. So they weren't considered white until 1940.
You've definitely blown my mind today.
Well, actually, there was a quote, an essay from Benjamin Franklin, and he wrote this in 1755. And he
Okay.
described that, I think the essay was called Observations on the Increase of Mankind. You can find it online. And he basically describes the whole world. He says, the whole of Europe is black. The Italians are black. The Irish, the Spanish are black. The Swedes are black. The Russians are black. Right. The only white people are in Saxony in Germany. Right? Well, remember what I said, Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah. Yeah.
The English, he didn't say the Irish or the Welsh or the Scottish, he said the English and the newcomers in America. He said that's all the white people in the world. Now, when I say white people, I'm talking about a very particular bloodline, which is which I'll go into later. It's not what you think, because you're not of that bloodline, or anyone who's listening to this is probably not one of that bloodline. But I'm
So,
talking about.
would you say that in regard to like the time frame, that would sort of fit in with the reset back then, and the moving around the populations, and orphan trains, etc., and how they muddled up the history so much? Because I believe I've looked into a lot of American history, and there's a lot to suggest that some of their presidents were black, and a lot of the initial residents there were black as well, and not necessarily the Native Americans, as we're led to believe.
Right. Yeah, so it literally does tie into the this idea of orphan trains and stuff, because, as I said, 1755, right, there's only a very small number of white people in the world, right? Less than 100 years later, we got this phenomenon of babies in incubators. Right, so it was introduced in the 1893 Chicago World Fair. Right, so they had this massive building called the Baby Incubator Building, and it was rows of thousands of babies in incubators. And the public could come in and look at them and even buy some if they wanted. Right? So there was no word of where these babies came from, where the mothers. There was no word about the mothers. It turns out that 2 years before, a guy called Hans Dreich came up with cloning. He invented cloning back in 1891. Right, so put the two and two together. Right? Somebody invents cloning, and all of a sudden, thousands and thousands of babies appear. Yeah. So then 6 years later, these babies become the orphans. So again, in the early 1900s, there were orphans everywhere, not just in America, but in the UK as well, in London. There was, Oliver Twist, and also in Russia, there was all these orphans as well. And these orphans were then spread around the whole world. So from the UK, these orphans went to Australia, to Canada, to all the Commonwealth countries. In America, they went all across America to fill up the towns that were there. And same in Europe. They got spread out through Europe. So the thing is, there were no black orphans, not a single one. Right? So
yeah. That's like from every picture I've ever seen, I've never seen a black orphan in the orphan train photos. Or no, you're quite right.
So they went from a very small number of white people to millions in less than 100 years, right? And the thing about if they're clones, well, I think it's relatively easy to clone a body, but what they can't clone is the driver, that self-conscious, self-aware being that can talk to itself.
Yeah.
So it turns out that there's a massive population of people who don't have an inner monologue. So they don't have a voice. Yeah, they don't have that voice you can have a chat to. So if you're explaining something to me, I'd be going like, that's interesting. Oh, I wonder if that connects to that video I watched last week. I got to remember to ask him this question because maybe this connects to that and that. So as you're explaining stuff to me, in my head, I'm having that conversation, analyzing it and coming up with my own interpretation. Yeah. If you don't have that voice in your head, how do you do that?
That explains so much. That would explain why there's such a large percentage of the population, the whole NPC. It's just an inability to actually do it. That's
well, they couple that with the fact that at exactly the same time as these orphans appeared, the public school system was introduced. So what does school do? It teaches you to obey authority. So all these orphans went straight into these new public schools. They were indoctrinated with obey authority. So that was the base program. And now they can't assimilate any new concepts or information. So they just go through life obeying authority.
Well, it makes so much sense. You've actually fractured my mind here in about 3 different places, but it would explain why there's more richness in culture within like the Black community, why there's like a more sort of spoken, like handed down culture, whereas if they were cloned and just came into existence, where's your lineage, where's your ancestral knowledge, none of that's present. So you're literally just a living vessel, and they can do whatever they please with you and program you whatever way you want. And that has explained quite a lot. And
well, you might call them useless eaters, mightn't you?
Well, you might.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, obviously, but you might.
Yeah, well, you know what? If they created these people, they would call them useless eaters because we created them. So, you know, we can get rid of them if we want to.
and
And
do
if
what
you
they want with
saw,
them.
yeah, if you see how they were treating these babies back in 1900, they were like grabbing them up by the legs, like you know, showing them around like cabbages, you know.
Yeah,
Like because you know these days we handle them like you know, oh no, mind his head, you know, oh, you know, but these were like just grabbing them up and going, look, do you want to buy these, look. Yeah, so
it just
um
proves that nothing is everything is connected and everything is disconnected all at the same time. It's such a very strange place we live within. You know, like what you've just said there in the first 35 minutes has explained why we have NPCs, why there's certain people that just seem to have no long term culture that just kind of have appeared. Um, yeah, that's mind blowing and explains a lot.
well, since we're on that and this topic, I'll give you another side of that same thing. Okay,
Hmm.
so going back into the Old Testament, there was literally, it talks about an alien invasion in the Old Testament. Not from outer space, because that doesn't exist, from a different dimension. Okay, so it talks about angels coming down and having sex with women. Right, this is Genesis 6, and
Hmm.
spawning their own race of
Nephilim.
beings. Okay, Nephilim. And remember when I said that Benjamin Franklin was talking about a very particular bloodline,
Yeah,
right? He was talking about the Nephilim bloodline. Okay,
yeah.
so those white people that he was describing were the Nephilim descendants. Okay,
So
um,
with the Nephilim, that's another like obviously complete subject on itself. But um, in the story of the Old Testament, God sent the flood to wipe out the Nephilim, but obviously all were not taken out. And then there was lesser species of giants as well that came after them and survived post flood. And
I Yeah, I don't actually believe that. I don't think there were new Nephilim created. There might have been one that survived the flood. He was Og. There's a story that says Og survived it, actually clambering onto the ark. But what happened was Noah was the only one that was pure, had Adam's DNA. He's the only one left. Right. Noah's wife was of the line of Cain, okay, Naamah. So Noah's children were tainted; they were corrupted by this DNA. Noah had to find wives for his 3 sons a week before the flood, and the only women that were available were corrupted ones. So the Nephilim DNA got the other side of the flood through the DNA of the children. Now there's a story straight after the flood where Noah gets drunk and literally one of his sons comes in and, according to the book, sees him naked, right, uncovers his father's nakedness, right, and goes out of the tent and laughs, and the 2 brothers basically cover up Noah, and all of a sudden Noah wakes up and realizes that his son has done something to him, and he curses somebody called Canaan, which was Ham's son.
yeah,
Right? That story doesn't make sense. But really, if you piece the whole story together, what happened was, as I said, Naamah, the wife of Noah, was of the line of Cain. Okay, so she had Cain's blood, which is again sort of pre-Nephilim, right?
yeah.
Um, so Ham went in and he had sex with his mother. So, because in Leviticus it says to uncover a man's nakedness is to sleep with his wife. Right. So,
Okay, yeah,
look up in Leviticus. It will say the nakedness of the wife is the nakedness of the father, whatever. But literally, that's what happened. And the book of Genesis goes out of its way to say Canaan, the one that was cursed for it, Canaan is the son of Ham. You know, it says Ham, the father of Canaan. It says it about 3 or 4 times, right? Just to drive home the point that Canaan is Ham's son, not Noah's, because I believe Naamah gave birth to Canaan. Right? So just to make sure Canaan wouldn't be mistaken for Noah's child, it just kept redundantly saying Ham's the father of Canaan. So if you think about it, it's a concentration of this Nephilim DNA into one child, right? So post-flood, the giants that are mentioned all seem to have come from Canaan. They're all Canaanites, right? So it was a concentration of Nephilim DNA in Canaan. So the thing about the Nephilim is that when they die, and this is from the book of Enoch, when they die, their spirits can't go anywhere. They're stuck on earth as disembodied spirits. Yeah. So in the days of Noah, what they were doing was genetically creating and mixing human and animals, right, and into these chimeras to be hosts for these Nephilim spirits. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got the stories of minotaurs and centaurs and harpies and all sorts of things that they were creating to be host bodies for these Nephilim spirits.
Yeah, well, I fully believe like unicorns, mermaids, dragons all existed.
Yep.
All existed.
All those mythical creatures. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that process hadn't stopped. It never stopped from the days of Noah. They've been continuously trying to create the perfect host body, right? So the alien abduction thing, right? We know they're not aliens, right? If they're not space aliens, what are they? Well, they're demonic, right? And the demonic is the fallen angels and the Nephilim, right? And their spirits.
And the proof to that is there's been so many like abductee account stories where they have invoked the name of Christ and they have immediately come out of that abduction situation, you know, so that would definitely tend to suggest that it's demonic in nature as opposed to otherworldly.
I would slightly disagree, because I think if you stand up to these demons, right, without fear, same thing happens. I've experienced it myself. And you don't need to invoke a name, but you stand up to these things without fear, because they fear us. At the end of the day, they fear us, which is why there's a stock in trade of horror films trying to make us afraid of them. Yeah, but
would make
anyway,
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so that process has always been going on, trying to create these host bodies. And the thing that comes out through these alien abductions is reproductive experiments. Yeah, it's always about reproduction.
Probes, they're always probing something or taking DNA. And that's in regards to Genesis. I've often said this for years. It's just a book of genealogy. You know, it's a book of like like even if you look at it on a surface level, it's telling you, you know, where each lineage comes from and all the rest. But if you look on a deeper level, like you clearly have, it's telling us about genetic manipulation. It's telling us about so much more that we think has only came in with Dolly the sheep.
Oh no.
It's been
so again, I think this has always been going on. And I think when cloning was invented, part of this was now shifted to trying using cloning to create this perfect host body. So what was happening in Germany during the Nazi regime was a project called Lebensborn, right, where they were getting the blondest blue-eyed women and the blondest blue-eyed tallest men, right, to basically put them together in big brothels and get them to try and breed out the human and get back to the pure Nephilim. Because again, the Nephilim were giants to start with.
Yeah.
They were described in the Book of Enoch as blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and pale-skinned. Right, very pale skin. Right, so Lebensborn was trying to get the Superman, the Ubermensch, yeah, the Nephilim, or try and breed out the human. So when the war ended, right, you've heard of Project Paper, Operation Paperclip,
Of course, yeah.
of course. Did you know there was a second one? I think it, and I can't pronounce this. It's like Operation Asaivakim, yeah, which was 7,000 or 8,000 Nazi scientists went to Russia. So the same thing happened, just two directions, yeah. So the Americans got the rocketry guys, the MK Ultra guys, all that stuff. I believe that Russia got the eugenics guys, yeah, the ones that were working on Lebensborn. Right. Okay. So guess where they went in Russia?
I'm gonna imagine Siberia or something there.
No, it's quite topical, right?
Oh, Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Okay, so, the bread basket.
Well, you heard that Ukraine, there are neo-Nazis there.
Mm-hmm.
No, there was the actual Nazis. That's where they went.
Right. Okay.
So I believe they carried on the Lebensborn experiments, right, over in Ukraine. Now, following the whole, sort of incubator baby, orphan children theme, I'm going to get a lot of text at the moment. There were, in this country, there were thousands of orphanages. In America, there were thousands of orphanages. So today, there are 0 orphanages in this country, 0 orphanages in America, 0 orphanages in Canada or Australia, 0. I found one place in the world where there was at least 750 orphanages. Do you want to have a guess where?
That would be Ukraine, because I have been to Ukraine and worked in said orphanages.
Right. Okay. So again, put these together. Yeah? Now you got Lebensborn happening in Ukraine. You've got all these orphanages. Ukraine is the baby production center of the world. So surrogate motherhoods. You'll get a Ukrainian supposedly carry your baby for you. So they're producing children not only for the adrenochrome and the child trafficking, but generally producing children. Let me skip. All right, just hold that thought. I'm going to skip a bit. When you go back to the Gulf War, right? The first Gulf War, there was a second narrative that was playing under this, weapons of mass destruction narrative. There was a second narrative. The second narrative for the Gulf War was to loot the museums of certain artifacts. So the American soldiers were literally going into the museums and literally looting them, trying to find stuff.
There's video footage off that.
Sorry?
I've seen video footage off that as well. There is video footage. It used to be anyway. I don't know if it's still available, but there was video footage used to float about online of American soldiers in just at will. Same in Afghanistan as well. Just in taking old artifacts and destroying old buildings.
Right. Well, I think in 2003, they found, there was a news story, it came out, and one news story and then disappeared. Okay. That they found the tomb of Gilgamesh.
Yes.
Right? Or Nimrod. It's actually Nimrod. Nimrod and Gilgamesh is the same person. Yeah. And not only that, they found Nimrod, his body preserved. So Nimrod was a giant, at least 12 or so foot tall. And he became a Nephilim. Yeah. And that news story said that they extracted his DNA. So we know that there's a connection between the Americans and the Ukrainians, right? I believe the Americans contributed Nimrod's DNA to the effort to create the perfect host body. So there's a second narrative, or there was a second narrative underneath the Ukraine war. Do you want to guess what that was?
I'm going to imagine it's got something to do with genetics again.
It was Ukrainian children needing homes in the West. Do you remember that?
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yes.
So, so various countries around the world, right, literally took millions of Ukrainian children. Yeah. So I think Ireland said initially they were going to take 300,000 of them, and then they turned around and said, no, we're going to take unlimited numbers. Right?
Yeah.
Same with Canada. Same with America. In England, they said they've been a bit quiet about it, but you know, I think Hungary took in something like 1.1 million. Right. So I'm guessing that they have perfected the host bodies for these Nephilim, and now these host bodies are spread out around the world. Okay, like little sleeper agents. So in the Old Testament, and I think it's Isaiah, I can't remember offhand, it talks about in the last days that the mighty men will return. That's what
Men
it
of
says in the
renown.
Old Testament. The mighty men. But when you
Yeah.
look at the same passage in the Septuagint, it said the giants will return. Okay. So
You heard the story
again,
of
follow
the
me.
giant of Kandahar story?
Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if there was many more hiding out throughout the world, because there's a surprising amount of land that hasn't been explored in this world. Yeah, there's places where no human has set foot yet.
Which is scary to think, isn't it? When
Yeah.
we're led to believe there's nothing out there left to discover, no new lands, nothing, but it's the narrative that's being created around it, isn't it? More than anything.
Yeah. But if you jump on the M1 even in England, yeah, what you'll find is lots and lots of empty space, and then suddenly a big town of lots of people, and then more empty space. Right. But this is just one tiny little island. Yeah, it's the same everywhere in the world. It's not everywhere has been discovered, has been explored.
Do you believe the population of the Earth is what we're told?
Absolutely not. No.
No, nearly.
Actually, there was a study done where these researchers actually took the population figures for not for the countries, but for the most populated towns in the countries or cities in the countries, and literally they couldn't even find more than 1.5 billion, a generous estimate. Yeah, so it makes sense because the elite have been banging on about how they want to depopulate for decades, and
So
there's no reason to believe they've not been successful.
I would be a one drop, I would imagine then.
Right. So again, you've got in this world, you've got this Nephilim bloodline who think they are gods because they have the
Yeah.
blood of the gods and they are better than the rest of us. Right. There are a whole load of NPCs. Right.
Mhm.
There are a whole load of black people who look white. Right. And you've then got black people. You've got mixtures of all the above. Yeah, so it's a big sort of big mishmash, but that there are only two groups that have largely stayed to themselves, and this is these we call them the elites in this world, but these Nephilim bloodlines and the bloodlines of the Israelites, which I haven't really spoken very much about. But as I said, I think the the Ukraine the Ukrainian children are essentially sleeper agents, and there's an event that's supposedly coming where it says in the New Testament, which I think is essentially a roadmap for the other side, the minions of the other side to follow, essentially. So I think they're going to open this pit using, I believe, CERN.
100%. Yeah.
And there's something like 10,000 CERNs around the world. So they're
There's a
going
big
to
one in
literally.
New York as well, isn't there? There's a big one under in New York.
There are. I didn't realize there's 10,000 of these things all scattered around the earth. I thought there was like the one at CERN and maybe another one somewhere. No, there's 10,000 of them. Why do we need? Why do we need that? We don't. We've been handed the technology by the fallen angels, right, to build machines for them. Right. That was the story of Contact. If you ever saw that film Contact, they got a message from space, and it had instructions how to build a machine, the most expensive machine in human history, and we built it, and it was a portal. Yeah.
So why do you feel they need to tell us? Like they always do tell us pretty much what's going on without actually saying, "Here, this is your actual history."
Now, yes, there's an aspect of them having to tell us, having to get us to agree to it, right? But there's something else that I've found out about when I'm looking into how the fourth dimension works. So imagine the whole of time and space as a kaleidoscope. So when you look in a kaleidoscope, you see this massive pattern that goes on infinitely, yeah. But that pattern is like a section with all these colored bits and pieces, and then an arrangement of mirrors around it. Okay. So when an event happens, right, it's like making a change in the pattern. So if you make a little change in the pattern, that change is going to reflect throughout the rest of the pattern. Yeah. And bearing in mind that pattern is time and space. So whatever you do is going to throw off reflections into the past, into the future, into the present. Yeah. So it's not all that they're having to tell us. I think they can't help, it can't be hidden, because once it's there in reality, it's going to reflect into the past and present and future. And people are going to pick up on it maybe years before it even happens.
That is a lot to take into the mind, but makes so much sense at the same time. All these wars, all these events have changed, like on the surface level, just from an NPC level, have changed the trajectory of the world and like economics, etc. But we all know the world goes much deeper than that and more dimensional and multi-dimensional than that. So like you said, a kaleidoscope is probably the perfect explanation for it, because it's not just the surface level. It's like 16 different, layers to the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. On my website, I've got something called the Muggle test. Okay. I call sleeping people muggles. So I've got the Muggle test. Okay. So when you go on the Muggle test, it will give you 10 random questions, and they're multiple choice. So you've got 5 different choices. And the thing is that each choice represents a level of understanding. Okay. So the first choice is the answer that you'd get on television, right? The mainstream view. Okay.
Yeah.
The next level is it's all about money. Okay. So when people wake up, the first thing they think about, what's going on. Well, they're in it for the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you soon figure out that they've already got all the money. So, it can't be money. The next level is it's about control. Okay. Well, yes, you can see that it's about control, but when you realize they've already got all the control, So it can't be that. The next level down is it's about depopulation. Right. Well, we're seeing that in the world right now. They're openly admitting it. Yeah. The next level down from that is it's depopulation of a certain demographic of people.
That
And
makes.
that's as far as I've got with it. But
Do
yes,
you think
so
that
that's
that's why
you're waking up.
COVID, for example, seemed to only like target very much so the black community, more so
Yes.
than anything else?
Well, it's actually more than that, because there's one group of people that it won't target, and it's people with Rh negative blood.
I wanted to get on to rhesus negative. Yeah, so that's a good segue. Are they Nephilim related, do you think?
Right. So yes. So the Nephilim introduced all sorts of strange genetics to humanity. So Rh negative blood is one of them. So Rh negative blood is where the red blood cells lack a certain protein coating. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that protein coating on your red blood cells, you're an Rh negative. So you've still got the O, A, and AB and all that, but you've got this negative and positive factor. So Rh negative only occurs in 15% of humanity. It doesn't appear anywhere in the animal kingdom. Okay, just 15% of humanity, and that 15% is incompatible with the 85% of the rest of humanity.
And
Right?
is the term blue bloods tied into rhesus negative?
Yes, because Rh negative blood has a slightly bluer tinge to it. It's got more copper in it than iron, or it's got a higher percentage of copper in it compared to iron, and
And
so there is a bluish tinge.
and they will reject. They will not host a certain type of blood type either. Their body will reject it. Isn't that right?
That's right. So an Rh negative woman, if she conceives of an Rh positive man, her antibodies will attack the baby as a foreign object. Yeah, because they're not compatible. So a woman, Rh negative woman, has to have a ROGAM shot to suppress her immune system, so the baby has a fighting chance to live. So here's the thing: the Nephilim, the original Nephilim, were again very tall. They had blonde hair, which is hair lacking in melanin. They had blue eyes, which is eyes lacking in melanin, right? And they had very pale skin, like that almost translucent skin, yeah, which would have had a bluish tinge to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, after the flood, that next group of Nephilim, they came through the human line, though. They were, it was extracted from the human line, right? So these new bunch of Nephilim, well, their blonde hair had a little bit of melanin, so that's red hair. Right?
Yeah.
Their eyes
6
had a
fingers.
little bit of melanin, so that's green eyes. Yeah. The skin had a little bit of melanin, so it's red pinkish skin. Yeah, or red skin. Okay, so that's where you got the red-haired giants. Right. So that's also
I'm going to
why
ask
red gingers. Sorry.
the red. So obviously accounts have read about the red hair and also like 6 fingers. Is that
Yep. Oh,
correct?
I
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah, sorry, I didn't go through all the genetic traits. But 6 fingers is one. Excess body hair is another one. Again, blonde hair, blue eyes, and 6 fingers and toes. An extra vertebrae in the back, or a tail sometimes. So and wickedness as well, psychopathy. Right, that isn't a human trait. Okay, humans. Okay, if I was to lie to you, for instance, right, I would my whole body would be going, I'm lying, yeah, and I wouldn't be able to help it. My body would
Yeah.
literally be going, I'm lying, yeah. internally, I would have all sorts of, internal changes as well. Like my heart would beat faster. My blood pressure would be up. I'd be blushing, maybe. I'd be sweating and all sorts of things. Right, my hands would be shaking. Yeah, all sorts of things that will tell me that it's uncomfortable to do things wrong. Okay, the psychopaths don't have any of that. When they lie to you, no external sort of expression of that. There's no internal changes either. They can lie through their teeth, and we wouldn't detect it. Right?
And that's probably why these people get the top fluting jobs, etc., because it entirely suits the emotionless and lack of humanity.
Yeah.
So
If I was to lie to you, for instance, you would pick up on all these little cues on a subconscious level, and you'd know, well, I don't think he's telling the truth. Yeah. But when none of that's coming over to you, you're not gonna detect it.
So we just take it on the surface level for granted that everyone has these same emotions going on within them, and then we branch people off as psychopaths or narcissists or whatever. But really, it's a complete different genetic makeup.
Yep, it's one of the genetic traits of the Nephilim. Again, you can go back in the Book of Enoch and the Old Testament, and it describes this wickedness.
Do you know how the Nephilim are tied into clowns?
Yeah. So apparently, right. They look on the astral plane. If you meet them, if you meet these spirits, so you can literally get there through psychoactive drugs, and overwhelmingly, the entities that one meets there, look like clowns, and they're going to be these Nephilim spirits because they're the only spirits that are wandering around there.
This is why I'll never do psychedelics again, because I took DMT and it was definitely demons that I met, and it was not a religious experience whatsoever. It was a complete. It was traumatic. Is the only thing I would describe it as, because it feels like a lifetime, but it's only actually 10 minutes is passed, so that you're in a place where time and space is no longer relevant. It felt like I was there for a lifetime, and there was clown-like faces. There was all sorts of demonic faces there. It was a very, very scary thing.
Yeah, I mean, you've got this idea. There are a lot of people out there who are terrified of clowns, right? Again, we have senses about things. We have genetic memory about things as well. That we, there's a reason why gingers are reviled. Yeah, there's still to this day people take the piss out of them or something, but in the past they'd be feared, they'd be hated. And that, I think, came from the red-headed giants, and that again came from the Nephilim.
And that's probably also to this day still maybe diluted or whatever, but still of the same bloodline. It's not a natural.
Yeah, well, I think we're back in the days of Noah, where pretty much everybody has got some Nephilim DNA in them to some extent or another. That doesn't mean to say that you're a Nephilim if you've got some of their traits. I think that the deciding factor is wickedness, evil, because before the flood, Noah and Methuselah preached to the people for 120 years to repent, right? Which means that even these wicked, Nephilim, half breeds,
They still can repent.
They still had the opportunity to repent. So I think it's still an option for many people here. Doesn't matter how much of their DNA you've got. It's wickedness, I think.
And like you said about Noah, he was a raging alcoholic. As far as the Bible makes him out, he was definitely fond of getting drunk and disorderly, shall we say?
He only says it once.
It certainly implies that it was certainly a thing. He gets straight off the boat and he's getting blocked. So, it proves that God does use everybody. It doesn't matter what you're, drinking, drugs, whatever. You can be used, providing you're ready to be used.
Well, there's a book that came out in 2019. It was released from the Vatican Archives, which they actually first admitted they had for the first time. It's called The Book of Lamech of Cain. And
Okay.
yeah, in it says that Noah, he was of pure blood, but he wasn't an upright man. He wasn't, this perfect bloke. But he was pure blooded, though.
Yeah, and that's
So
why
yeah,
there appears to be two creation stories in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. I think that Adam was first pure blood man to be put on the earth, but before that there was already a population, because otherwise who would his son have married? You know what I mean? So there
right.
has to have been
So
people before.
yeah, I talk about this as well. So Genesis 1:27. If you look at it, it says that God created males and females on the sixth day, right, and told them to literally go out and spread out across the earth and replenish it. Yeah, the word for God there is Elohim, which is the plural for El. And when you look up the word El, right, in Hebrew. Right. So in Hebrew, what you've got every word has about 8 different meanings. And when they translate the word into English, what the translator does is go down the list and go, oh, I think it's this one. I think that's what it means. Yeah. So they
Yeah.
take one meaning and then they put it in. But how Paleo Hebrew works is you take all of the meanings together and see what that feels like to you. Right. So El, when you look it up, it's mighty man, mighty hero, God with a little g, God like one, yeah, angel. Okay, so there's a few more, but when you put them all together, it means mighty angel worshipped as a god. Right, so the proof that I think of that is the names of the angels: Mike L, Uriel, Raguel, yeah. Can you
Yeah.
remember Captain Scarlet?
Yeah. So
Rhapsody Angel, Symphony Angel, because they always had angel at the end. Yeah.
so
So
everyone
Michael,
always thinks the English language is utilitarian. I believe it's here for spell casting.
yes,
It's here to easily create a narrative, because every word has double meanings. So like, even you're saying good morning to somebody, you're telling them to like have a sad day morning. You know.
yeah,
Um,
literally, it's backwards. English is backwards. Right, Paleo Hebrew reads from right to left. English reads from left to right.
yeah.
So it's backwards. Not only that, as you said, it's not just it means something else. It literally, each word tends to mean the opposite. So you say one thing, you actually are saying the opposite. So you don't know what you're actually saying when you speak,
Your
and
spell
that
casting, yeah.
yeah, and that's exemplified. When you go into the legal system, yeah. So you have no idea what you're talking about when you're speaking, in legalese, which is
Yeah.
kind of English, yeah. Yeah, I've got a whole talk on that called the language of creation, right? So, yeah, you look at all the words together and see what it feels. So it was the angels that created these males and females, right, on day 6, and they were told to go and spread out around the earth. And then after some point after day 7, doesn't tell you how long after day 7, right? Adam was created by the Lord God. So if you look in the
Yes.
Old Testament, you'll find it's God, 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 and then Adam, the Lord God. So the Lord of the angels
Gary
created
Wayne's a
Adam.
fantastic resource for that for that side of things.
Sorry, second.
The author Gary Wayne is a fantastic resource for that Genesis 1 or Genesis. Well, he calls it the Genesis 6 conspiracy, but for the two creation stories. And if you do read it, it is clear that Adam was not literally the first being on earth. He was the first pure bloodline that would lead to the birth of Christ.
Right, that bit is where I differ from these interpretations. Look, I got to where I got with this because I had no actual exposure to religion or the Bible whatsoever. My mum
Okay.
was a Roman Catholic who didn't practice because she saw no value in it. So she didn't try and force it on her children. So she left us to figure out what it is we wanted to believe. So I researched it when I was 13, and I decided they're all control systems. And so I was an atheist for about 40 years. But then I read the book for the first time, and I read it 3 times front to back and decided to research the Old Testament. And I found all this stuff. It's unbelievable. Just like I was finding everything about 9/11 and Sandy Hook and all this stuff. Yeah, I turned those skills onto the Old Testament, and literally all this information just flooded to me. So
any particular old books that you referenced? Like, because I feel like, anything that's in print now has been manipulated. So you've had to go back to source, I imagine, to get a lot of this information. So have you had to go to eBay, or where have you got the hold of these texts? Or
right, so I started off with the King James 1611 Bible, and that came with the Apocrypha, so 14 extra books. And then I got the Book of Enoch. I got 2 copies of that, the Ethiopic and another one translated by R.H. Charles, I think it was. And then the Book of Jasher and the Book of Jubilees. Right?
So along with the King James Bible, he also had a book on demonology as well in 1600s.
Yeah, he wrote a book on demonology. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a tangled web. I mean, you would need to have such a grounding in your own being to research these things, because it's life altering and earth altering. It's very, the information has got the possibility of changing things. You know what I mean? If people actually adopted it and took it on board. And
absolutely. Again, I was an atheist, but as soon as I sort of started to understand the book, which shocked me, because when I first read it through, I understood it. I understood it as a story. It was like before it was just gobbledygook, but I literally read it. I was like, wow, this is a story. I can feel this story. And up until I got to the New Testament, of course, because all of a sudden you get to the New Testament, it says, you know what, forget all that. Forget that 4,000 years of history of so-and-so begetting so-and-so begetting so-and-so. It's all about this guy now. Yeah. And to be honest, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. If it was real, it would actually be within the New Testament, the Old Testament, because the Old Testament goes from beginning to end. Right? Literally goes right from the beginning right to the end. It literally tells the end in Genesis. Right? So there is no room for the New Testament. Right? And when you research who was behind the New Testament, you'll find it was the enemies of the Israelites. Yeah, the
so even
sworn enemies of the
stories
Israelites.
in the Old
Sorry?
Testament, like King David, the story of King David slaying Goliath in the Old Testament, that says about him going down to the riverside and collecting 5 perfect stones. Now, people may interpret that as lack of faith in God, but they forget that Goliath had 4 brothers, so he was there to wipe out a bloodline, not just Goliath.
Yeah, I think his men wiped out the other brothers as well, didn't they? Yeah, so I actually think the Old Testament is 100% true, and I've been finding evidence of the events of the Old Testament in the landscape. I don't know if you know that Noah's Ark was found in 1960.
Yeah, by
Well,
Ron Wyatt.
it was actually by a Turkish army captain, but Ron Wyatt went back and actually proved it.
Yeah,
And
he done all the carbon dating and got the wood tested and stuff, and then got the aerial shots off the actual, and to the very centimeter. Well, what we would call now, it was cubics back then, but it was exact same size, exact same shape to the T, and it was on Mount Ararat. Wasn't that right? Or
well, it was in the foothills of Mount Ararat.
yeah,
Did you know that the Most High made an appearance as well during that?
in the
So,
60s.
well, when Ron Wyatt was trying to excavate the site, right, the Turkish government refused to let him excavate. So they were dragging their feet and they wouldn't let him do it. And then all of a sudden, there was an earthquake right at that very spot that excavated it for him. So I've got to say that's the Most High, sort of going, here you go, because okay, so it was found in the foothills of Mount Ararat. Okay,
Yeah,
and the story says no, it came to rest in the mountains, not in the foothills. Okay, so Ron Wyatt actually ended up going up into the mountain, right, and he found the keel of the ark still wedged in the mountaintop. Okay, so the thing that was missing is that at some point in the 3,000 or 4,000 years since the event to now, Ararat, which is volcanic, erupted and covered the ark with lava. Yeah, so quickly it couldn't burn, right? And the weight of the lava and the ark snapped it off its keel, and it went down the mountainside in the lava flow. Now, if you go on Google Earth and find that very spot, you'll find a dark patch that looks like a lava flow, right? And you find right in the middle of it, there's the ark, and there's a sharp rock, and you can see that the ark is dented where it got speared in the side with this outcrop of rock. So
and he
there's
also found the Ark of the Covenant as well, and several other biblical things. Where was it? Where they rained
he
down
found
the
the
sulfur. He found like the
Sodom and Gomorrah,
Sodom and Gomorrah, yeah. And it
and he
was in
found the
Saudi
Red Sea
Arabia.
crossing. Yeah, he found Red Sea crossing as well.
He found
Um,
all the. It was like the chariot wheels and everything was still there, still preserved under the water. Yeah,
yeah,
I was looking at him years ago. Such an interesting character, and he has a museum still, doesn't he, in
right.
America? I think with some of the artifacts.
I do think he was under pressure to find New Testament artifacts. He was finding all this Old Testament stuff. He was under pressure to find some New Testament stuff, and I think he fabricated some because he said, "Oh yes, this is proof of that JC was crucified here." But it turns out this place that they call Jerusalem isn't the same Jerusalem. There were two Jerusalems. There was a Jebusite city and the Amorite city. And the city of David was a Jebusite city. And the Jerusalem now is the other one. So it can't have been JC, and because it's the wrong Jerusalem.
How does your brain sleep at night, Dave?
Well, actually, lately I've been sleeping very much at all.
I was going to say, because the information that is retained within that skull is beyond belief. Like, and you're just able to categorize it like the Dewey Decimal System, just like activating the library.
I'll tell you what, at school, I couldn't retain anything. Yeah, because, all I can remember is 1066,
That
but
listings, yeah.
but I think it's because at some level I knew it was all bullshit. So it's like the mind was going, oh, you don't have to remember this, don't remember. But since 9/11, and I've been trying to sort this stuff out, and I think writing the book really helped. Even though I
Yeah.
didn't publish it, I wrote it for me to be able to sort it in my mind. I can retain all this stuff because I think it's the truth.
Yeah, and you know what I was saying earlier on in the conversation about everything is actually connected. So you know your previous work on the legal system, the lawful and the legal, the flat Earth, all these things are connected. You know, like inextricably so, because you take away our divine being that we were created by letting us think that we're on a wee dot spinning and you know in an infinite universe, whereas we're actually in an enclosed, you know, firmament, and we have been created, and we have been created in the image of the most high. And when people realize that, they would maybe start taking life a wee bit more serious and a wee bit less on the materialistic side of things, and more so on how they treat others, what they're doing in their own, you know. I think having that knowledge is such a it's a blessing and a curse, because you must feel like you're on an island alone sometimes, because you have such understanding of a lot that's going on, and not really many can comprehend to the depth of which you're speaking. Um, but then, you know, it's a very lonely place, I'm sure.
It was until I started to understand. I call it the fourth dimension now. It's much bigger than that, but basically to bring everything that I've learned over the last 20 odd years, this idea of the fourth dimension, what this place is, you know, who's behind it, and what part do we play in it? You know, that's what was answered by I guess my latest talk.
What
Um,
is the chances of a part two? Because people's attention spans are not great, as we know. We're already an hour and a half in, and I don't even feel we've scratched the surface of what you could unfold. Would there be a chance of a part two?
yeah, sure, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah,
But maybe I could give you the end of my my fourth dimension talk, because
give it, give
it's
it. Yes, go ahead.
okay. So you were saying about not taking psychedelics. Um, so drugs don't work on me generally. So I tried acid, nothing happened. I tried DMT. I saw something, wavy lines and some writing, some text. I tried magic mushrooms. I saw the text again, but nothing much. Um, I tried ayahuasca. I
Mhm.
literally blanked out for 6 hours. Not even no experience of time passing. I just skipped over 6 hours. Anyway, but what does work on me was cannabis if I eat it. Okay, so I would have what I call cannabis journeys. So
Okay.
I'd eat a bit of cannabis and settle back and listen to what it tells me, and it would teach me stuff. Um, and to go back to what you said, the last time or the next to last time that I took it, it said, "Don't take this anymore." You know, it was a kind of menacing, "No, don't take this anymore," because essentially you'll be open to these entities. So I took it again, and I did experience that. So anyway, one of my cannabis journeys, it was a quite involved one, because I had a bit too much cannabis oil, and uh,
Have been there.
so yeah, yeah. So there was a frightening aspect to it, but I overcame the frightening part, and then I was lying there, and I realized, like, my finger twitched, and I heard music. So my finger twitch was like a, you know, dip, 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 dip. I was like, what was that? And the cannabis said, your body communicates with itself through sound and movement. So I kind of lay back to listen to my body, and I was twitching various parts of me just to see what it sounded like. And there was this like symphony going off inside of me. This music, my internal music. And if I move my arm, maybe the strings would play a little riff, you know. And I've got this part of me while I'm cannabis called the cloud observer. It sits like slightly above me and behind my head, and it comments on everything that's going on. So I'm lying there twitching parts of me, and my cloud observer says, Dave, from here it looks like you're having a seizure. Can everybody quieten down? So my body went kind of limp. And as I lay there, I could hear this sound. And the sound was just like if you go to a football match before the match starts. It's the sound of, 10,000 voices all talking at once.
Yeah.
So I heard that sound, and I said to the cannabis, well, what is that? And the cannabis said, that's the sound of your cells. I was like, whoa, okay, let me see if I can hear, focus in on one voice, right? So I'm concentrating, listening to this sound. And as I'm listening to it, it was like, somebody, a player got the football and he was running down the pitch with the ball, and there's only the goalie between him and the goal, and the crowd's going, the crescendo's going up, and he scores, and it's like, wah, And I said, what? And I got this feeling, this warmth of awe and gratitude and wow. So I said, wow, what was that? And the cannabis said, your cells know you're listening. And I realized that I am the most high to my cells. My cells are conscious living beings that think they're Dave. They're not aware of Dave. They're not aware of me. They're aware of being themselves as separate beings as part of this collective, but they're not aware of me, or they're dimly aware of me. But now they suddenly realize that the Most High is listening to us. So we're the same. We are cells in a larger body that we can't comprehend directly, but that thing is us. And we're a small reflection of that thing. And imagine how it would feel if all of a sudden we knew that the Most High was listening to us right now, right? And listening to our prayers. That feeling that you'd get, I got that feeling when all my cells are listening to me.
Yeah.
Or I was listening to myself. Yeah.
Like that sounds entirely insane, but I actually get exactly what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Yes. You're the Most High to those living beings, and then we are the cells within this nucleus, which is the plane of existence, and the Most High is our host.
Right. Well, think about it. You've got two cells in your body. Yeah. They interact. Their interactions, right, accomplish functions in our body. Yeah. So they interact in certain ways, and something gets done in the body. Yeah. This conversation between the two of us is doing exactly the same. Maybe our conversation is making a heart work, or causing new synapses to be created, or whatever. Yeah. Just this connection that we're having is performing a function in the body, the larger body. Yeah.
So you've heard the term as above, so below. I'm more a believer of as within, so without.
Same thing.
That you are kind of the arbitrator of your own reality, and how you view yourself will be how you are perceived, and how you, if you have joy in your heart, you will have a joyous existence type thing. It's very much about perspective, and it's very much about understanding the inner self before outwardly projecting.
Yes. Well, yeah, as above, so below, so within, so as within, so without. It's all the same thing, because this universe is a holographic fractal. So the same things, the same, the fractal is similar at every level. Every level up, you're going to see the same things. It might be more complicated, but it was exactly the same thing, just a little more complicated above and above, and so below as well. And also, it's holographic. So that whole thing is in every piece of the hologram. So you, as a piece of the hologram, have a whole universe inside you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It turns out, and I won't remember the actual number, but there's something like, 7 times 10 to the 27 number of atoms in your body. And there are almost, I'm guessing it's exactly the same number of stars in the observable universe. So
Yeah.
you are the universe, right? Again, my latest talk, it takes at least 3 hours, but literally I go through how the universe was created, because there's a blueprint. There's literally a blueprint that shows how this universe was created. And you can follow it, and you can then figure out not only what the whole point of this is, you can figure out where the Most High comes from, and and what the whole purpose of existence is. It's kind of obvious.
What you're saying is we really need a part 2 and a part 3, because that's there's no way you're going to be able to get that across in an hour and a half on part 2, because my mind has exploded in several different directions just with this conversation, and I imagine anybody that's watching it is going to have a lot to take in. I am intrigued and fully on board with what you're saying, and would love to hear the blueprint, and would love to hear that part of it. So we'll definitely have to do a part 2 and a part 3, because this is information that needs to be out there and not just
Okay.
in allegedly Dave's head, you know?
Yeah, happy to do it, because this particular topic, this latest talk of mine, it's I get this amazing feeling just giving this talk, because it is so empowering, and it's like, if you change this view of how this world operates, it changes you. Last time I gave this talk, I had this amazing idea for a product, right? So an idea came to me just by listening to myself talk about this, yeah, because just changing their perspective of how this world works. Yeah, we've been sold a lie, a complete and utter lie about how this world works and what this world is about, right? And what that does, it limits us into seeing the world that way. Yeah. All you have to do is change that perspective, and now everything is possible.
And
Absolutely everything.
would you say Dave now, or allegedly Dave, shall we say now, I would imagine that a 10-year-old version of yourself you would run rings around now, because you've acquired so much more knowledge since then?
Absolutely, and everybody has. That's the point.
Yeah,
Have we got time to give you one more little nugget
of
on
course.
that point?
Okay.
Okay, so I help people. This is what I've been doing for the last 13 years. I help people for free, and one of the things I help people with is depression. So what I do for people is I get them to figure out. It takes a while to explain, but I'm not going to go through that. But I get them to figure out what their trauma was, because most depression has roots in a trauma that they suffered when they were a child. Okay, so I
Yeah.
get them to figure out what that trauma is, right, and what age they were when they had that trauma. Right, let's say it was 8 years old. Okay, so I get them to imagine that the 8-year-old version of them was standing in front of them. Right now, that 8-year-old didn't really understand the trauma that they suffered. They know they got hurt, but they didn't understand what was going on because they had an 8-year-old's mentality.
Yeah.
But as an adult, you'd know exactly what to say to that 8-year-old, right? So I get the person to imagine themselves as an 8-year-old and teach that 8-year-old that trauma, right, wasn't what they thought it was. And this is how I described it in my earlier talks, if they teach that child, which is a program that runs in their heads, if they teach that child, then it will heal the child in the past, which heals you in the present. Okay. Now, my understanding now, knowing about the fourth dimension, is that the fourth dimension is where the whole of time and space, right, is laid out in front of you as an object, one single object, where all space is concentrated and all time is concentrated. Just like in the third dimension, you can look down at a flat two-dimensional world and have a complete overview of that world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only so if you've got a two-dimensional being like a circle, right, not only can you see that being, but you can see inside the being as well. Right? You can see everything. So in the fourth dimension, you've got an overview of the whole of time and space. Okay. Now you can access that fourth dimension using your right brain and your heart. Right? We call it imagination or that creative thing. It's you literally connecting to that object, and you can either read or write to that object. Okay. So when you use your imagination to imagine that 8-year-old child, what you're doing in actuality is connecting to you when you are 8 in real time. So now you're connected to yourself when you are 8, and you become the voice in that child's head. Right? When you're 8, going, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It wasn't the way you think it is. Yeah. And so you change the past. You change that child in, when they were 8.
Essentially, time travel.
Yes, it is. And we do it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, we're told, no, that's not what's happening. But no, that's exactly what's happening. When you manifest a car parking space, yeah, literally, as soon as you ask for that space,
My dad does that all the time. He is the
right.
king of manifesting car park spaces, and it's always the most appropriate one ever. It's right outside the door that he needs to go to. It's like we've always thought it's like another worldly gift that he's got. Or we called it luck, but clearly it's a bit deeper than that.
It's not like, and everybody can do it, or let's say all humans can do it, but literally, what's happening is, okay, if you do nothing, you have a probable timeline going off into the future to your death. So by probabilities, there's a probable timeline that you're going to take, and it's already fixed. Yeah. Okay, nothing you can do about it, right? But if you go into the fourth dimension, right, you can make changes. And again, you do that with your imagination, with your intention. Okay. So if you don't do anything, that probable timeline gets you at Tesco's where somebody else is in your space. Right. But if you decide, you know what, I want that car parking space. Yeah. There is another timeline, maybe not very far away from that one, where you are in that space. But that timeline diverged from your timeline somewhere in the past. Okay.
One last question.
Sorry?
How on earth do you look 30? How have you stayed so young looking?
Urine therapy and a mindset. Again, mindset. That's all it is. Seriously, if I talk about, again, this is another one of my talks. There's a group of women in America called the Palm Springs Follies. Okay, they're a dance troupe, and they 8 dances a week, really strenuous dance routines and all that. the interesting thing about them is the youngest was about 62 and the oldest is about 87, right? But they look like 30-year-old women, attractive 30-year-old women, right? The reason that they look like that is because in their minds, they're not old women, they're dancers. And dancers have to be a certain way, right? But you can contrast those women with another set of women with the same ages who don't think they're dancers; they think they're old women, and you know they're sort of all wrinkled, and because that's the picture they're holding in their heads,
And I
right?
think like the birthday and stuff, that all those things are leading towards your inevitable path that they want you to stay within. You know, recognize the
Yes,
other year is older, and that's why there's such a ceremony around the burning the candles and the cake and blowing them out and making a wish. Whereas you can actually just access the fourth dimension, and you do not need to
yes.
succumb to that. Obviously, we all have to die,
If,
but
if I said the age 80 to you, right, right now you've got a picture in your head of an 80-year-old, and not only a
mhm.
picture, you've got a whole list of what an 80-year-old can and can't do. Yeah. And unless you change that picture, that's where you're going. Yeah. So, but you can change that picture, right? So I literally helped my mum. I helped my mum out of a wheelchair. Right, she'd been in a wheelchair for 20 years, right, and literally got her out of a wheelchair. And I gave her a task to complete. I said to her, "I want you to spend a few weeks designing the woman that you want to be." Right, so literally you have to determine exactly who this woman is, what she looks like, what she wears, how she walks, everything, you know, and include a few things that she would do that you're not doing, right? And I said to her, when you've got this woman completely and utterly defined so that you know the back of her hand, yeah, you know everything about her, right, then I want you to be her. And she said, well, how do I be her? I'm not her. I said, okay, if you walk into a building right now, and you're faced with the lift and the stairs, what would the young fit version of you do? And she said, well, go up the stairs. I said, well, what would you do? Well, I'll take the lift. I said, well, every time you take the lift, you're telling your body that you're an old woman who needs the lift, right? And so your body's going to go, hey, I notice you're not using your legs so much. I'm going to whittle them down since you're not using them. Yeah. But if she was to start taking the stairs, act like the picture that she's drawn of herself, if she started taking those stairs, it might take her an hour to get up 4 flights of stairs. But the next time she does it, it'll take half an hour. And the next time it'll take maybe 15 minutes. Next time,
Yeah.
5 minutes. Yeah. Eventually, her body's going to go, hey, I notice you're using your legs a bit more. I'm going to build them up since you're using them. Right. And eventually, her body is going to start to conform with the picture she's holding in her head. And one day she's going to look around and go, oh, I'm that woman. And pretty much that's kind of what happened, right? There's I've got a picture of my mum when she was in the wheelchair. I've got another picture of her a year and a half later when she's out of the wheelchair, looking 20 years younger. And then I've got another picture taken maybe 3 or 4 years after she was out of the wheelchair, and she looks about 30 years younger.
That's scary. And it's like it's something that I have always known, not to the level of articulation that you've just put it, but I've had a fair idea that like you kind of are what you believe, and all that, and you've just verbalized it in a very digestible way. So I'm gonna have to cut this short. If you can stay online just while the outro plays, and I'll get a quick chat with you afterwards.
Well,
Bit late.
I'll just say as a closing thing, yeah,
Yeah.
this is a game we're playing, right? And if you don't play this game consciously, the game's going to play you. So you know, it's up to you. You can play it consciously if you like, and you'll see amazing changes. But if you
Stop
don't, the game's
sleepwalking.
going to play you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect end. Stop sleepwalking, folks. And while you're not sleepwalking, like, share, and subscribe. And we will have Dave back on to blow our minds some more. So yeah, I'll just end the recording here and I'll speak to you straight after. Just 1 second.
Yeah. 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 Not here to make you happy, not here to make you sad. Your feelings are irrelevant when debates are to be had. The Belfast Bapcast, loud and clear, covering the topics of the sphere, Working overtime to bring you many stories. Waking up today, the same labor and Tories. A stage, it isn't our part to play. Is bringing you knowledge in this way. No filter, no fuss, just tell unfiltered fact. Much like the words on those Christian tracks.